created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
And I know that these opening notes are something you're very familiar with because we are talking about one of the most well known, one of the greatest favorites of the arias sung by the baritones. This is, of course, one aria that, as we have mentioned in other previous episodes, every mezzo soprano would like to be Carmen and La Habanera, every soprano would like to be Mimi and sing Si mi chiamano Mimi. Every tenor would like to be Rodolfo and sing La gelida manina, and that would be the case for every baritone would like to be Giorgio Germont and be able to sing Di Provenza. Di Provenza is a short name by which we know this aria. Usually complete is Di Provenza il mare il suol. Of course, we're going to be talking about the content of the aria, but to start with, I think we should need to refer to something that I have mentioned in previous episodes, and that is, of course, we're talking about a composition by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi and one of his greatest creations, one of the most well-known operas of all times, La Traviata. Which other rather than La Traviata? So we have this very well-known role of Mr. Giorgio Germont, of whom we are about to talk, but provided that Traviata is one of the most well-known operas, not only by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, but in the whole operatic repertoire, we need to refer not only to Violetta Valeri, La Traviata herself, and we are not talking about Alfredo Germont, the young guy who ends up falling in love for Violetta, but we need to talk now about the father of Alfredo. But before we jump into that detail, I would like to mention again what we have shared in previous episodes about a sad part in the life, in the story of Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, the fact that he unfortunately saw his children and his wife died. The children he had with Margherita Barezzi died as well as her, and this is something Maestro Verdi never really recovered from. So for many biographers and many people who have studied the creations of Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, that is one of the reasons why Maestro Verdi pays particular attention to the role of the fathers in his operas, because being a father is something he really couldn't be, as he had to see his whole family die. And there is a wide variety of roles that Maestro Verdi wrote as being fathers. Of course, you have Rigoletto, who loved his daughter Gilda, but you know that Rigoletto himself had a story of not being a good guy. Of course, you can have Amonasro, which in Aida is certainly not the best father. You also have, for instance, Nabucco, where he's more a father to Fenena, but not really to Abigail. So Maestro Verdi composed for a good number of father roles, and there is a good variety of how good or well devoted they are to their children. At the end, what matters to us is that, and I will allow myself to use this expression, this is a role composed by Maestro Verdi, this is a baritone, but this is not the Verdian baritone that we usually talk about. If you also allow me the expression, this would be one of the least Verdian baritones of his entire catalog. Because think of Amonasro. If you think of Amonasro with high, powerful, bright notes, high notes, lots of stamina, Amonasro is a great example of a Verdian baritone. You want another Verdian baritone, think of Don Carlo in La Forza del Destino, the brother who would pursue his sister till the very end just to kill her. Another great, bright, powerful, full of stamina baritone. And you have Rigoletto, maybe not as powerful, but still with very difficult arias where he has to prove himself above the level of the orchestra. But that is certainly not the case for Giorgio Germont. Giorgio Germont, being the father of Alfredo, is thought as someone who is already old. He's not a young guy, the father of at least two children, because we learned from the duet he just had with Violetta Valery, with La Traviata, we learned that he has another daughter besides Alfredo, and that is part of his justification to ask Violetta to leave Alfredo. The duet itself is very interesting. However, I don't think the duet will make it to this season because it is hardly ever, outside La Traviata, it is hardly ever sung in duets. In any concert or recital, you will hardly ever find a duet. It is very long. It is super long. Not that difficult, but it is super long, and that would explain why you will hardly ever see it on stage outside the performance of La Traviata itself. Well, after we have learned that Giorgio Germont has another daughter, which, by the way, is the part where he says pura si come un angelo. Pura si come un angelo, Dio mi dio una figlia. That beautiful part that he sings with Violetta is where we learn that he has another daughter, when also Violetta herself has replied, Di due figlie. And then he starts, pura si come un angelo. And that's where we learned that, and this is very important, that's where we learned that Giorgio Germont puts as a justification for Violetta to separate from Alfredo that he has another daughter who is about to, or who is getting married. But there is no way he's going to get married because people know that Alfredo, the brother of his daughter, of course, the other son, is with, and remember that we are very open about talking about Violetta La Traviata being, in fact, a prostitute. So how does the world of those 1800s see that a young man, maybe if not from a rich family, at least from a good family, how does society see that a young guy from a good family is with a prostitute? Of course, it is not accepted. Of course, it is rejected. Of course, people do not like to see that because prostitutes are just to be prostitutes, selling their services to their clients. They are not expected to build an actual relationship with anyone. And of course, the image that they have about Alfredo is as well very poor, because who or how a man who comes from a good family would end up living with a prostitute? That cannot be accepted. And since that cannot be accepted, that is hurting the possibilities of Alfredo's sister to get married. And that's what Giorgio Germont, that's the reason why he went to visit Violetta, La Traviata, to tell her, I need you to break up because you are affecting my own daughter. And that simply cannot be. Because, of course, La Traviata, Violetta, has told him that she really loves Alfredo. What she expresses there is that with Alfredo, she has learned and loved as she has never been loved. She's happy with him. Why would she leave him? And Giorgio provides the explanation. I have another daughter. You have to leave him because otherwise you are hurting her. And that's the reason why Violetta accepts to leave Alfredo. Of course, they will end up making or building up sort of a plan so that Alfredo can be taken or can decide or accept at least that he has been left by Violetta in the belief that she doesn't really love him, when the truth is the opposite. She really loves him, but she can't be responsible for hurting a third party, which could be the sister of Alfredo. So with that in mind, and after Violetta has already left, the duet between Giorgio that has passed, and she has written the letter for Alfredo, and Alfredo now saw for a couple of minutes Violetta, and then he learns that she has just left, and then she receives the letter. he receives the letter where Violetta is telling him that everything was a lie, that she really wasn't in love, that she misses the type of life that she had earlier and not to go looking for her. So, of course, provided that they are actually in love for each other, of course that hurts Alfredo. Of course that makes him suffer. And that's when Giorgio Germont, having returned to Violetta's house, because this is all happening at Violetta's residence, Violetta's house, has come back and is trying to provide some comfort to Alfredo, which of course, being a young man, being so in love, now he feels threatened. He feels that the past months that he has lived with Violetta have been all lies, and of course that puts him in great despair. And Giorgio, as a father, again, because as a father he asks Violetta to leave Alfredo, and now Giorgio, as a father, asks Alfredo to come back to the place where he was born. And what place is that? It's Provenza. The small town of Provenza. It's what the Provenza il mare il sol is what this makes reference to. So it opens, and of course those very beautiful notes by Maestro Giuseppe Verdi, going back very quickly to the fact that this is not the super powerful, bright, above of the orchestra volume full of stamina baritone. That is not the typical Verdian baritone. This is going to be a much more lyrical baritone, because at no point he has to fight with the orchestra, at no point he has to compete with anything, at no point he has a challenging duo as in Nabucco or in Macbeth or in Don Carlo. He is just trying to be a father. If he was a good father or if he was not, of course I have my own thoughts, and personally I think that he's a result of the years he was living, of being aligning to the necessities of the society, because he's willing to sacrifice the happiness of his son Alfredo, in order for his daughter to be happy, but moreover, so that society does not speak of them. One may be led to think that this is not something very proper, sacrificing the happiness of your son so that people don't speak. It's simply not fair. But it's clear to us that Giorgio Germont is playing according to the rules of those days. So if society says that it is wrong, Giorgio is going to say that it is wrong. If society rejects Violetta for being a prostitute or for having been a prostitute, of course Giorgio is going to adhere to that. And in order to adhere to that, he goes as far as to visiting Violetta, convincing her to leave Alfredo, and then returning to convince Alfredo for him to go back to Provenza. So now that we know that the Provenza il mare il suol makes reference to the city where they are from, so the Provenza, let's start with analyzing. Now that we have understood the state of mind and the type of baritone that it is Giorgio Germont, let's go for this very beautiful melody that everybody knows. And I will give you, before I start, I will be emphasizing through each of the phrases, but I wanted to tell you something in advance, and that it is of the very few scores where Maestro Verdi gives so many notations for the singer to notice. It is usually could be Bellini, it could be Puccini himself, who write these many notes for the singer to be able to understand what the maestro was willing to transmit. But in this case, it is Maestro Verdi, and it is not common. Maestro Verdi usually doesn't give these many hints or indications to the singer, but this time he decided he would be giving those indications. Why is that? Because he wants Giorgio Germont to be very clear in the mind of the singer. So when he starts, it has to start. He mentions several times the word dolce. he asks the baritone several times to sing dolce. And the reason why I am telling you this right now is because, and people in the membership will know, when in the bonus episode I shared with you an actual recording of one of the greatest singers. It took me a really long time to find one that I really liked, because this aria, being so well known, happens to have the same sort of luck that other arias that are this well known have, which is no matter how poorly you sing it, you always get away with an applause. So baritones tend not to read and not to follow all the instructions in the score, because no matter how poor they sing the Provenza, they will always get the applause. But that is not fair, and that is not professional. Every singer needs to really study what he is expected to sing. So it comes to much to our surprise that Maestro Verdi will ask several times for the singer to sing not only piano, softly, but pianissimo, double P, and he even goes in a part for a triple P, which means this role is not, except for the parts I'm going to mention to you, this role is to be sung very quietly. And so the baritone needs to start with a low volume that has a slight crescendo, and then comes a shakatura, which, by the way, it's very difficult for a baritone voice to make a shakatura. We have explained it in other episodes, because basically the width of the voice of the baritone is important. The width between the minor and the highest peak of his voice clearly reach the distance in terms of frequency between a semitone. So asking for the baritone to make a shakatura will simply not be noticed. So the first phrase is di Provenza il mare il suol. He also, Maestro Verdi, emphasizes di Provenza il mar il suol. Di Provenza il mar. It is very well marcato, which means that it is not di Provenza il mar il suol. It is not that plain. It has to be di Provenza il mar il suol, chi dal corti cancello, which, by the way, he repeats, because Provenza il mar il suol, chi dal corti cancello. He has repeated the same exercise, which is that there is a number of 4 syllables which are emphasized. Venza il mar il corti cancello. The same exercise happens. That's why the initial part of the Provenza il mare il suol seems so similar. Di Provenza il mare il suol, chi dal corti cancello, chi dal corti cancello. By the way, before I forget, it is very important, and this is a word of advice for you if you're listening to any baritone, any recording of a baritone, or if you're a baritone yourself, that you have to do all of that, and we are barely in the first initial bars of the aria. You have already been asked twice for a shakatura, for a short crescendo, then you are emphasizing 2 times only 4 syllables, and you are also asked to make it dolce. And ahead it has to be marcato, and then you will have to go for a pianissimo. Those are way too many indications for the voice of a baritone. So what will a baritone do? Simply ignore everything and go di Provenza il mare il suol, chi dal corti cancello, chi dal corti cancello, di Provenza il mare il suol. But that is not what is written. that is way too plain. Maestro Verdi wants everything to be emphasized differently. Of course, my voice is not able to show it exactly the way it has to be. First, because I am not a baritone. So, since I am not a baritone, of course, I won't be able to share with you exactly what is expected, but I will try to explain myself and give you an example the best possible. So after di Provenza il mare il suol, chi dal cuor ti cancellò, chi dal cuor ti cancellò, di Provenza il mare il suol. And then again comes for a crescendo, and I also forgot that besides that sciacquaturas, crescendos, diminuendos, dolce, marcato, double P, pianissimo, emphasizing 4 syllables, he's in a very unfrequent way. Maestro Verdi is requesting ligaturas. And remember that when you have a ligatura means that you have to sing legato, which means that there has to be homogeneity in the phrase or in the words. The color of the voice has to be even. So, di Provenza il mare il suol, chi dal cor ti cancellò, chi dal cor ti cancellò, di Provenza il mare il suol. Al natio fulgente sol, qual destino ti furò, qual destino ti furò. Al natio fulgente sol, oramenta por nel dol, chi vi gioia te brillò. If you notice, when you or when the baritone makes the right emphasis in everything, and also before I forget, if you notice this emphasis of 4 syllables happens every ending of a phrase. Di Provenza il mare il suol, chi del cor ti cancellò, chi del cor ti cancellò, di Provenza il mare il suol. Al natio fulgente sol, qual destino ti furò, qual destino ti furò. Al natio fulgente sol, oramenta por nel duol, chi vi gioia te brillò. So if you notice, this same pattern of repetition is throughout basically the whole aria, which also, as a listener, makes you keep memory of how the melody is going. And he's mixing not only this ta 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 ta. If you notice, now it has come in a way sort of predictable how Maestro Verdi decided to build the whole structure of this aria. Now let's go back a little to the words, because we are almost in the middle of the aria and I haven't mentioned anything about the words, except that when he says di Provenza il mare il suol, chi dal cor ti cancellò, chi dal cor ti cancellò, di Provenza il mare il suol. Who, my son, has made you forget the memories that you have of our beautiful city, small town called Provenza? Who has made you forget Provenza? How come that you have forgotten the sea and the sun of Provenza? Who has made it? Of course, Giorgio knows that it's La Traviata herself, but he's sort of asking his son, why, my son, you were born in Provenza, you loved the sea, you loved the sun. Who made you forget all that thing you loved? al natio fulgente sol, qual destino ti furò al natio fulgente sol, which means again, well, besides the repetition of the same phrases, insisting, why did you decide to stop the fate, the destiny you had in Provenza, with that beautiful sun that we had in Provenza? Why did you decide to leave it? Why did you decide to stop the destiny you had there? Then he goes, Oramenta por nel dol, chi vi gioia te brillò, e che pace cola sol, sotto splendere ancor può. And now that we have reached Oramenta pur nel duol, chi vi gioia te brillò, e che pace cola sol, sotto splendere ancor può, telling him, but if you go back to Provenza, the peace that you need, you're going to find it there. E che pace cola sol sute splendere ancor può, e che pace cola sol sute splendere ancor può. That happiness, that peace that you're looking for, you still can find it in Provenza. But the other thing that I wanted to share with you, to emphasize it, is that you're going to find a little ahead that the baritone will be asked to sing in his high register between his do and his... Most of the notes will fall between the do and the fa for the baritone, which are not impossible notes. But what I wanted to call your attention here is that remember that we are talking about a very lyrical baritone. We are not talking about the super powerful Amonasro, the super powerful Don Carlo, or maybe Macbeth. We are talking about a baritone that is more sort of a lyrical. So I know, and when I said that the baritone has to make these pianissimos and marcando only 4 syllables and try to do a shakatura and a quick diminuendo and a quick crescendo, there are way too many things that the baritone needs to try to do, and I know that it's not easy because of the characteristics of a wide baritone voice. If you have a lyrical, some sort of small baritone voice, it is likely that you will be able to do it. If you're more of a baritone who sings Mozart, or who sings bel canto, more likely you're going to be able to do it. But if you are more of a baritone, a powerful baritone, like for the verismo or the heavy Verdi, it will be very hard for you to do all this. And most likely, when you reach these notes, your voice will, simply because that's the way you sing, the inertia of your voice will bring you to give way too much stamina to these phrases. So when you reach the part of che pace cola sol, you will be tempted to sing it like that, like you are giving way too much. Che pace cola sol, sotto splendere ancor può. But that is not Giorgio Germont. Remember that he's singing to his son. This is not Don Carlo fighting in La Forza del Destino. So still it has to be soft, and Maestro Verdi entered that note there, because in the score you say dolce and you have a quick crescendo immediately followed by a diminuendo, so it is not completed. Che pace cola sol sotes. No, it has to be growing. Che pace cola sol, sotto splendere ancor può. And for the first time, you're going to be allowed to do only a forte, because it is only one F con espansione, which means you will have the opportunity to grow, but remember that you cannot go full volume. It is not going to be like that. It is still, you have to be a father trying to convince his son. Che pace cola sol, sotto splendere ancor può. So if the baritone feels or is heard a little fragile here, it is completely what is expected, because Giorgio is suffering and trying to convince his son. He's not really preaching or yelling at him. It has to be, again, softer, suffering. Che pace cola sol, suo te splendere ancor può. Dio mi guidò, Dio mi guidò. And now triple P, which means very, very softly and rallentando. Dio mi guidò. So that is also very important because you come from a much stronger, louder, higher notes. Dio mi guidò, Dio mi guidò. But you have to bring it back to in control, much louder, much softer volume. Dio mi guidò. Of course, it also depends on the interpretation of the baritone if he wants to play a little with this final phrase, even though it is already marcato, as it is already with the indication of being legato, which means it has to be very, very beautiful pronounced and with homogeneity in the voice. Dio mi guidò. Of course, it is allowed for the baritone to keep the guidò for as long as he feels it makes sense, but only with the indication that he doesn't exaggerate. Because if he goes Dio mi guidò, Dio mi guidò, if you notice, it is way too much. You come from overdoing the first Dio mi guidò, you exaggerate the second Dio mi guidò, and you keep the same level of volume for the final Dio mi guidò, which is not. The first one is in a crescendo, the second one is maintained with forza, but the third one has to diminish substantially in volume. Now, the second part is constructed in a very similar way to what we have seen in the first part, because now he's going to sing al tuo vecchio genitor, tu non sai quanto soffrì, tu non sai quanto soffrì il tuo vecchio genitor. Te lontano di squalor il suo tetto si coprì. And not sure if you noticed it. We have the same that that I explained in the first part. We are going to have the initial syllables of the phrase, and then we are going to have these 4 syllables that are more marked. Vecchio genitor, tu non sai quanto soffrì, tu non sai quanto soffrì il tuo vecchio genitor. Te lontano di squalor il suo tetto si coprì, il suo tetto si coprì di squalore, di squalor. So, in the second part, Giorgio has said, il tuo vecchio genitor, tu non sai quanto soffrì. So, referring to himself, you, your father, this old father of yours, you don't know how much I am suffering. I am really suffering a lot. Tu non sai quanto soffrì il tuo vecchio genitor. Te lontano di squalor il suo tetto si coprì, il suo tetto si coprì di squalore, di squalor. So me, being your old father, knowing that you are so far from home, I just covered my head. I had no other thing to do than covering my head for all the suffering that I have, learning that you are far from home. Ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, se in me speme non falì, se la voce dell'onor in te appieno amutì, ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, se in me speme non falì, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì. Which means, after having learned that his father, the old father, has been suffering a lot, covering his head, probably for not listening to people, probably for hiding away from the fact that his son has escaped his house to be with a prostitute, says, but now that I have found you, and I still have the hope that you will come back, because I know that the voice of honor, that honor that lives within yourself, is not silent. You still can hear that voice, and that voice is telling you, and God knows that you will come home. Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, which is the phrase that he repeats for a number of times. So we're going to skip to that part after the Ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, se in me speme non falli, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì, ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, ti trovo ancor. Here, this final part has to do with the musicality and the understanding and the capacities of the singer, because he is somehow allowed to play. Because after the ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, which the singer needs to decide if he marks, as he just did, ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, or if he wants to do it more legato, ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, which in my perspective the two mean something different. If he does it more ti trovo ancor, the baritone Giorgio may look or may appear more desperate, which is in fact what he wants to portray, desperation. But if he does it more legato, he sounds more like a father. Ma se al fin ti trovo ancor, Dio me saudì, Dio me saudì. And how he wants to wrap that Saudi. From my perspective, it is more effective if he doesn't keep it for that long, because there are many baritones who like to keep Saudi, Dio me Saudi, Dio me Saudi, and they may even add a crescendo so that it sounds more impressive. But I think that is not the way it has to be wrapped up. I think that it is more effective if he does the opposite. If he diminishes the volume until it is almost like what Giuseppe Di Stefano liked to do in many phrases. Dio me saudi, Dio me saudi, Dio me saudi. Personally, I think that's more effective. Saudi, and then disappear the sound rather than increase it. Saudi, Saudi. Personally, those are my thoughts, because that matches more the genuine interest of a father who wants to give comfort to his son, and also a man who is worried about the daughter, and a man who really doesn't accept the love of his son Alfredo for Violeta, who is a prostitute. This is such a beautiful aria. This is such a very beautiful piece of music. But as I said in the beginning, this is unfortunately something that, provided that everybody loves baritones, do not like to look into these many dynamics that Maestro Verdi, crescendo, diminuendo, piano, pianissimo, forte, dolce, con espressione, con forza, now rallentando, only emphasize these syllables. There's way too many notes, way too many notes in this score for a baritone, but it's certainly very well worth it because of the tremendous beauty that Maestro Verdi gave to Giorgio Germont, the father of Alfredo.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera We Love Singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.